Everybody, welcome back to 3-Day Weekend. You got Chris back with you, and I missed you. It's been a few months. I think I'm pushing 3 months. I've been working on remodeling the house. This car has been sitting untouched up on the lift that whole time. So today, we're going to pick it up where I left off with replacing piston rings, and I'm going to end up doing rod bearings on this too. So I've got all the parts. They're in. I've got a second camera, ready to do some time lapses, and we're going to get going. So let's hit it. When we left you last time, I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to be doing on this. I just kind of tore apart when we were looking at things. But now I know what I'm going to be doing. I've got to hone out these cylinders. They really aren't terrible, but there is just a little bit on them. And I'm worried that they're glazed. They're awfully shiny. So I think that might be costing me some compression. So I'm going to be doing those. I also have new rod bearings. Got the old ones sitting over here. See, yeah, it's so dusty. It's been sitting so long. I got to really clean this up good. So new rod bearings in there as well. But before I start putting pistons in, I'm going to need to hone them. So I went down to Harbor Freight, Quality Tools down there, and picked up a hone. And we're going to see how it goes. There's some different techniques I've been reviewing and watching and kind of seeing what works best for people. So I've got the way that I'm going to do it. I'm sure everybody has recommendations, comments, different ways to do it, better ways. So if you have a better way, let us know. But I'm going to do it this way and see what result I get. I don't really have to do much. They're not in bad shape. They aren't rusty or anything. I just want to put a little bit of that crosshatch back into it. Also today on the custom tools, I got that hone. I also have a 4-inch ring compressor, which I've never used one of these before. I've always done it by hand. So I'm interested to see how that goes. It's also from Harbor Freight. Now, when you hone this out, a couple things you're going to want to watch for. And the first and most important thing is that little oil injector, which you can't see on the end of my finger. Oh, here, I'll put an arrow right here. There it is. That guy, you don't want to catch that with the bottom of your hone, so you don't want to go that far. I'm also going to put a rag down there because I don't want anything falling into my crank because that is open and exposed down there. And we're going to get some gunk and stuff. I don't want it falling down on that stuff getting in the channel. So, two things to look out for. So I'm going to take this hone and see how far I need to go down and where that's going to be so that it doesn't interfere with the little oil sprayer injector dealy thinger. I believe that is its technical term. I forgot to mention everything I'm doing today, other than this part because the manual doesn't really talk about this stuff, is per the repair manual, which you can buy a copy of online, whatever you want to do. But that's what we're following. So if you want to deviate on anything, that's on you. But that's what I'm following, so that's why I'm doing it the way that I'm doing it. I'm going to work on one cylinder, see how it goes, and refine the technique. And then I'll show you on the next one what I did and how to do it. I did the first cylinder, and that worked really, really well. I'm pretty pleased with that. That surface there, nice crosshatch. You can see what it was before. Nothing. And just a few hits with that, and it is good. I don't feel any deep scratches. It's pretty uniform. I like that. That worked well. So, what I did is just went down. I found that the top edge of this stone could go down about 1/4 of an inch below, and then I would get into that little oil injector. Doused each stone with PB Blaster really well. It kind of soaked right into it. And then went down in, did a medium speed, in out just a few times, pulled it out, and it was right where I want that finish to be. I like that. It looks really good. So why don't I do one at real speed using, I won't time lapse it this time. Step 1, jam that rag down in there. Kind of sits right under the end of the cylinder. That way I know I can't touch anything. Got PB Blaster on the rag. Just gonna rub the cylinder down. I'm just putting PB Blaster on here. I'm gonna go over and do it so I'm not over the engine for the rest of them. Everything is in there. So right about there is where that oil injector is, so I'm not gonna go any further than right about there. And that's it. That's all it took. Wipe that down. And that is a very nice crosshatch on there. I like it. That looks pretty good. I don't know how it looks on camera, but I am happy with that. Look what the difference between that one and that. Oh wait. The reflection doesn't help. There you go. Now you can see the difference between that and that. Looks pretty good. Pretty good. Alright, back to your time lapse. I'm going to hit these last two and then we'll start putting some rings on. It really didn't take much because these cylinders weren't bad. Other than I think they were just glazed over from being run so hot. So now that they're all fresh and everything, that is bare metal. Just in case I get distracted or called away or something, I don't want them to rust. So I'm taking some motor oil and I'm just going to wipe them down real good so that they're not going to rust before I can get this thing back together. If you're curious what kind of oil I'm using for this, I'm using some Polaris PS4 left over from an oil change on the Pro XP. Check out some of my other videos if you want to see that. All right, block is ready. Piston time. We're gonna pop out these old rings. I've seen some where they are frozen in place and they will not come out if the engine was, superheated or something. I've also seen where these pistons are cracked between these rows from getting so superheated. So make sure you're inspecting that really well. Oh, just broke that ring. And the oil spacer. Okay. Everything appears to be intact. So I think this piston is good. Alright, so to line them up, we see the arrow right here, which is pointing toward, if you remember, the timing cover. We're going to set our top compression ring up here. We're going to set our bottom compression ring down here. We're going to set our oil rings, one here, doesn't matter top or bottom, just one there and one there. And the spacer is going to be all the way over to this side. That's how we're going to line these up per the service manual. For rings, I just went to the dealer because I didn't really want to fiddle around with finding the right ones. There's my part number. You know they're high quality because they're made right in Korea. And in a plastic bag. Let's crack these open. We have the oil rings and the spacer. Top, bottom doesn't matter on those. On the compression rings though, it does matter top or bottom. So we're looking for some writing, usually right near the gap. There it is. You see that? Looks like a letter Y. That is what we're looking for, and that faces up. This one should have, yep, the same thing, a little Y right on this side. That's going to face up. At this point though, we're going to stick these down in the cylinder and make sure our clearances are correct. Of the two rings, I forgot to mention, the silver one, that's our top ring. This is our lower ring. But we're just going to measure the ring gap. We're going to do that by sticking that in the piston, which can be a pain, but you can press it and get that down in there. And then use your piston to send it down a little ways. About that far is probably good. And then we're going to measure the gap between the end of the rings. Make sure that's within our service limits. The service limit on the upper compression ring gap is 0.25 to 0.4 millimeters, or if you use in English, 0.0098 to 0.0157 inches. So you're checking your gap. Oh, that's perfect. That's 0.254 millimeter on that one. We want to be minimum 0.25. If it's too tight, they'll bind and cause cylinder damage. If they're too loose, you'll get blow-by, burning oil and loss of compression. So that is right on the money, that ring. So I'm going to pop the top ring back out and put the bottom ring in. And do the same thing with it. You'll notice I'm working on piston 4. This is cylinder 4. Everything is set up for 4. Nope. Make sure we're the right way up. There we go. And what am I looking for on this one? Piston lower compression ring to ring is 0.4 millimeters. And that is perfect. That's what's nice about running OEM is usually they are just right, but I'm still not going to trust it. I am going to check every single one, make sure they are 100% correct. I forgot to mention your oil rings. They also have an end gap, and that is 0.25 millimeter, 0.75 millimeters, or 0.0098 inches to 0.0295 inches. So we'll pop those into, make sure those are right, using the exact same procedure I just showed you twice. All the piston rings are in and ready to go. Start with your oil ring spacer. Put that in first, then the oil rings top and bottom. The oil rings doesn't matter, top or bottom, which way they face, but just make sure those markings are facing up on your main rings. Dark one is your secondary, and your silver one is your top ring. So now that the pistons are ready to go in, so I'm going to open up all of the bearings and set them all in the right spot so that we can put them in. And I'm going to turn the engine back over to top dead center. We're going to start with 1 and 4. Just going to turn it so that the rod is all the way down so I can get to it. Holy mackerel, I got it. I could not get my Harbor Freight ring compressor to help me with those. Oil rings just kept getting stuck, so I had to do it by hand very carefully with a screwdriver and poking the rings, and finally I got them. Jeez, what a pain. I'm only halfway done with that. But now I gotta go connect them from the bottom side and put the rod bearings in. So vehicle is going up. At this point, we're gonna have some engine assembly lube ready because we gotta put it all on the rod bearings. We got the rod bearings all sorted out and ready to go. So let's do it. Here we are down underneath. We're working on 1 and we're working on 4, and they're up there. I'm gonna clean these off real good. Put some engine lube on them, or oil if you just don't have any assembly lube, and tighten them up. We're using brand new cap bolts. The manual specifically says do not reuse the old bolts, and that's not a bolt I'd be willing to take a risk with. So we are using new bolts today. Well, there's number 4. I haven't torqued these yet, but it's just sitting there. So let me show you. With number 1, this is the bottom of the piston sitting way up here, and that's crankshaft, obviously. And I found that you can pretty much just set that up there, and it falls right into position. See that? That one's off a little bit. There we go. So that is in position. And then you're able to reach around and pull it down. But let me put a little more oil on that. With this one. It's hard to do with one hand, but we got it. Making a mess. Get that on that bearing right there. There we go. And then pull it down to the crankshaft, like so. And then the same thing with this one. I marked it earlier, that faces forward, and that is going to go on there like so. We'll put our bolts in just to hold it. If you didn't mark the arrow which way they go, see this little knobby right here on the side? Those face toward the transmission. So if you mark the number but not which direction, you'll be able to tell with that little guy right there. So I gotta pull that down and get a couple bolts started. And once you get all these in, we'll torque them, then rotate 180 degrees and get the other 2 pistons in there. And then we'll be moving. Those are all in. Everything's facing the right way. The little tabs are facing out. Light so you can see it. And I reset it back to top dead center and put the pin back in. It's interesting. You can see the slot that the pin fits into in the crankshaft right there. That's neat. Didn't know how that was before. So next, I'm going to clean off all this old gasket material and reinstall the oil pan gasket, just using black sealant. Go all the way around the pan, and then up here you have to put it in this channel, right around there, and around this little guy over there. Yeah. I'll get to cleaning. clean as that's gonna get. Next up, we're gonna put a bead of black silicone on it. We're gonna favor the inside edge all the way around. Even on this back little intake or whatever this is, channel. We're gonna go on the inside edge of that. Gasket applied. That might be a little thick on the back, but it'll work. And under here, follow this channel right here. I'm not sure what this is, this hole here, but it gets a bead around it too. Feels like the end of a bolt or something sticking down there. Don't know why it matters, but it does. I'm gonna put this tray on. It only goes one way. The original bolts to hold that on. Oil pan is in. Torqued all of these and these two big bolts. If you have a manual, there's 3 bolts. So those go to, oh, my light died. Those go to 30 foot-pounds, and these go to inch-pounds. What are we doing? 89 inch-pounds on these little bolts all the way around. So that buttons up the oil pan, which means that I'm done with the pistons. So now I start putting the head back on. I made a different video for that one already, taking a head gasket, changing it. So check out part 2 of that. That's when I'm putting it back on. For now, I'm just gonna time lapse it to the end and we'll see if this thing starts up. See you in a few. It's all put back together, except for coolant. I didn't put coolant on it. I just want to make sure it starts and runs, no major issues. I did it in the time lapse I unplugged the coil pack right here and cranked it over. I did it twice. It'll stop you after a while, but just try to pump in the oil up, get it flowing before I start it up. So all that's left, I'm going to plug in the coil and it should start. Well, let's find out. There's always some smoke, but that's fine. That sounds pretty good. Let's check the oil pressure light. And we've got oil pressure. I don't even have a check engine light, which is surprising because I never disconnected the battery. Well, it died, to be fair. And there goes the idle down to normal. Cool. All right, like I said, smoke is normal. So I'm going to fill this up with coolant and start doing some test drives. If you don't know how to fill it with coolant, check another video I have out for that. Shows you how to do it. You pretty much just do it one time, then you don't have to keep rechecking. Works out pretty cool, so check out my other videos for that. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate every viewer, every subscriber. If you haven't subscribed already, consider hitting the button right here on the screen. Really appreciate it. All right, hope to see you again right here on 3-Day Weekend.